Evening, everybody. I can see a couple of people already on. Hope this evening finds you well. I see Kieran's joined us. Volume okay, Kieran? Hi, Lee. Can everybody hear me okay? Never too sure on these things. Hi, Andy. Nice of you to join me. Thank you, Lee. That's okay. I've spent the last week teaching online to loads of 11 to 16-year-olds, and you can never quite tell if they can actually hear you at all because they just go really quiet. It's really surreal. You ask them a question, they just go dumb. Evening, Gareth. How are you this evening? Oh, Neil's here as well. Hello, Neil. And Dave. That's great. It's like meeting friends down the pub, this. Just I can't see you and I'm the only one with a drink as far as I know. James is here as well. Welcome, James. How can you share it? I have no idea, Kieran. I just do it. I've got no idea how you share the thing. Oh, evening, Dan. Good for you. Good that you could join us. Got your... I need to buy the beers. Yeah. Good that you can join us, Dan. Hope everything's well with you. Out and about, doing what you're doing. I know, I've just put the Lost Lake logo up there just for the moment because there you go. Take that down. It's like having a fire curtain in the cinema. It's not just that. Look, got the Lost Lake hoodies. Look. Just in case you weren't sure who I was. Chalk ices, yeah. Absolutely. Do you know the one person that I know lots of people have asked me about it, but the one person, Phil Spratt, who wanted the Peeping Caddis, I haven't seen him pop up yet. So Phil, are you here? Evening, Malcolm. Okay, you think we'd all have better things to do on a Friday night, wouldn't you? Than listen to a half-baked Welshman put bits of fluff on a piece of metal. Right then, guys. So I want to maximise the tie-in time this evening. I want to try and get a couple of patterns in. So feel free, as always, to throw up questions and statements and stuff in the comments. If there's anything that maybe I gloss over and you just want a bit more clarification, please ask. And guys, feel free to answer anybody that comes on, because I can't often see the comments coming in as live as you guys can. It's actually not that easy, strangely enough. So as always, these sessions are recorded. They'll be up on the YouTube channel. And I am very conscious, I'm very behind on my tie-in videos and step-by-steps. So there will be at some point a tie-in video, step-by-steps, those sorts of things, for you to follow and have a go at. Okay, so tonight's pattern is, I've got to say, is one of, I have lots of patterns that I like, and I only have a few that I use all the time. And when I go back after the end of a session, I look at my used flies for the day. You can guarantee I've probably only used 2 or 3, maybe 4, and one of them is always going to be the Peeping Caddis. And the Peeping Caddis is one of those patterns that, and it was mentioned earlier on today, I think, in a post up on the group page about somebody had never caught on a pheasant tail nymph, and we talked about, somebody else was talking about it being not a pattern that they have confidence in. Well, this pattern is one of those patterns for me that I have absolute confidence in, and you know, I stick it on and something magic happens, and I tend to either get lots of hits on it, not necessarily takes, but 9 times out of 10 it'll wheedle out a fish when other flies have really not been doing the business. So we're going to start off. What I'm using here is a jigged hook, as you can see. This is a fulling mill jigged hook. There are lots of good jigged hooks on the market. I just happen to have quite a few of these. It's the FM 5045. It's double heaviness. It's got a claw point to it, which I quite like. I do think it does make a difference to actual connections. A bit like a circle hook, I suppose, but not so extreme. It's got a 50-degree eye on it here, and the eye itself is in line with the shank. As you can see, it's not at 180 degrees turned around like a normal eye. On it, I've got a 3mm tungsten bead. It's not slotted. I don't actually have a lot of slotted beads. I don't really get on with them personally. So this is just a normal bead, tungsten black nickel, and I'm going to use a uni thread. It's a camel 8/0 to start off with, and literally I'm just going to put a layer of thread down the length of the hook shank like we would normally to form my hook base, or my fly base. There we go. I'm just going to bring it back. It doesn't matter really how far you take it down, I don't think, because we're not too worried about it being in a particular place, but that's just about right. Okay, so we're talking about probably again in line with the barb of the hook, or where the barb of the hook would be, because this is a barbless hook. Next, that all important Peeping Caddis head. So if you look at cased caddis under a microscope, you'll see that that they're in these tubes, which will often be made of grit, sand, wood, bits of detritus that they've collected, because they will basically case themselves in whatever they can find. So in terms of in terms of, I just read Kieran's comment about which wine goes with the Peeping Caddis. You know, they will encase themselves in absolutely anything, and out of the rear end when they're hunting and feeding, because they're carnivorous, is that they will actually stick their heads out with legs, and that's what we're going to try and imitate. So to do that and try to imitate it, I'm gonna use this rather useful stuff, which is Semperfli Peeping Caddis wool. okay, which we stock here at Lost Lake Fly, and there's enough on there to last a lifetime, to be perfectly honest. But it comes as a multi-stranded synthetic wool, and it's got, if you unravel it, as I unravel it, it's got 4 strands to it, and I find that 4 strands is too much, so I'm just going to separate it out. And basically, you got enough there to tie about 20 just in that little strand, and you end up with an end piece like this. Now that's the bit I want, and I want to form the head on it, so I'm going to use a lighter. So in this case, it's that typical candle lighter, and I'm just going to take the end like so. Make sure there's some gas in here, and then I'm just going to gently just burn it. There we go, till I get this black little head. Now that black, there we go, so that black head by there quite accurately mimics the head of the Peeping Caddis as it pokes itself out of its body. Okay, now I have done this with quite thick sea fishing mono, 30-40 pound, in like sort of a bright yellow, and melted that down and formed the ends, formed the head. That works quite well. But I do like this this wool, and it is pretty useful for other ties as well. So what I'm looking at here is I want the head to be poking out across the back of the hook bend. So that's about right. You watch them in reality, they poke out quite far, so they could even come out as far as that. But for the basis of what we need, I'm going to say that's about right. And I'm just going to hold it on top, and I'm just going to use a little pinch wrap, drop it down just to hold it in place. I'm going to put 1 and then a second, and then I'm just going to have a look at it. And there it is on the top. And I've got this bit sticking out over the end. Now that's going to help me form an underbody, because these creatures are quite chunky. So I'm just going to take a few turns just up towards the bead. So I'm just behind the bead like that. And then just tighten up behind the bead. And then I can cut off the waist end like that. And you can see that I've got enough here. I could tie loads with this. So we've already got the main bit in, and now I'm just going to tidy up the underbody and bring it all the way back down to where we started, like so. Okay, all right, so we're into this bit. We got this bit here. Okay, so it's already starting to look pretty lifelike. So you see, got the head bit there. Okay, now my next stage on this one is to start to think about the legs that we're going to put in. Now for this, I'm going to revert back to using my good old friend partridge. Now, as I said before, good quality partridge is really hard to come by. So if you come across a full skin of good quality English partridge, a red-legged partridge has its place. Most of the partridge that we see red-legged partridge running around are actually French partridge. So English partridge is preferred. It's got a nicer grey. This is a dyed brown Hungarian partridge, which I've shown you before, which I picked up for £4 from Orvis. And what I'm looking for is one of these side feathers. So sort of, if that's the cape, I'm looking for one of these side feathers here. And I'm going to pull it out. And I want them quite long, because the legs on these little creatures are quite long. And you sort of get a feel for it. It doesn't matter if they're shorter. You don't have to use partridge. You could use mallard. You could use any other game feather that you've got. You could also do a dubbing loop CDC set of legs as well. It doesn't really matter. Now, what I'm going to do with this is, like with most game feathers, the stalk is really thick, and that's just a pain. So actually what we're going to do is we're going to tie it in from the tip. So I'm going to hold the tip, and I'm just going to draw back the feathers into a V shape, like that. And I'm going to position it so that the curve of the feather is towards me. So you've got the best side towards you there. And I'm just going to place it on the side, and I'm going to put 2 locking wraps in, and I've got that in place. And then I'm going to take my thread down a ways and tie those in. And then any straggly bits at the end over here, I'm just going to trim off. Now the reason that I've tied those in all the way down is because when you put any pressure on these game feathers at this end with some hackle pliers, they can slide out, and I want it really well stuck in, so that I can ensure that it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, so next stage, I'm going to put a rib on this for a bit of segmentation, but also to give it a little bit of support and protection, because I like these. I like to be able to take multiple fish on these. So I'm going to use well, I've just so happens I've got a hen's wire here. It's a red one I'm going to put on. You could put whatever colour you like on. Traditional would be sort of copper or gold. 0.18 mil. You could go finer. I often do. And I'm just going to tuck that into the back of the bead, and I'm going to bring my thread down and trap it in, and then bring it all the way back up again. Right back to the start. There we go. So we've got 3 key components in so far. Now the rest ultimately is just a dubbing body, and you can use whatever colour dubbing you like. You know, olives are obviously going to be exceptionally useful, so I'm going to go back to my favourite trout stalker and do scruffy dubbing. Sooty olive here, and I'm going to use this. Now I'm going to use 2 colours ultimately. I'm going to use the sooty olive at this top end, and I'll explain why in a moment. At this top end, so in it goes. So the sooty olive, just going to dub some onto my, I don't want it really tight. I'm going to put a couple of turns so that I'm down about 3 or 4 mils. There we go, 3 or 4 mils down the body. You can see we're starting to develop the body here. Now this is where my feather comes in, because now we're going to form some legs. Now this is one of the tricks to a successful peeping caddis, I find, is that I'm just going to use my hackle pliers like so, and I'm going to draw those barbules forward like this, and I'm going to take 1 turn at the base of the peeping caddis wool, and then I'm going to wrap backwards down that dubbing that I put on to the shank. So actually I'm almost palmering the hackle and just pulling it back so it's not trapping anything. If anything gets in the way, you just take your dubbing needle and just push them in the right direction. There we go. And then when you got far enough, about 2 or 3 turns, I'm just going to trap down this thick stalky end of the partridge like so, and then I can just release it. Now remember, try and use the smallest number of turns that you can to reduce any excess bulk. And you can see that these partridge barbules are just poking back, and that's because I stroked them all back, and also then I palmed it down through, and they were all trapped in place, and we're going to increase that in a second. So just make sure that's nice and tight, and then I can trim away the waist end there I'm just going to put a couple of extra lock-in turns so I know it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, so that's the point at which, here, this is the point at which I'd stopped with my dubbing. So at this point, I am going to use a different colour of dubbing. Now you can use whatever colour you like, to be fair. I was given, I'm sent it to this nice Caddis green. Okay, which I've never used before, so I thought I'd use it today. We know that colour always helps. And you can mix this up with a little dab of a darker colour if you like, a little bit of sparkle. The good thing about Andrew's scruffy dubbing is it just dubs so well onto the thread. So I'm going to work my way down, and I'm going to put a little bit more in. Remember, less is more. You can always add more. It's harder to take it away. 1, 2, 3. I can always add some more in a moment. And we've got our main body tied in here. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw all of these legs back as much as I can. And sometimes you just need to get your dubbing needle in there and just pull them all back so they're pointing as far back as possible. And this is where your rib comes in. So I'm going to bring my rib round. I'm going to draw all of those legs in, and I'm going to try and trap them down with a turn. So it pushes them, so it looks like they're just trying to escape from the tube. They're not sticking up at loads of different angles. And then I'm just going to bring it down and through. Like so, equal turns until I get down to the bead, and then I'm going to tie her in place like so. A couple of turns, tying silk nice and tight, work away. There you go, like so. And we can start to see that we've got segmented body, got a bit of green in there, got the olives. Not quite sure I like that green just as it is. I might have, I think in the future I'll mix that with something, but hey, I haven't lost anything. I've tried something new with what I've got in front of me. And then what I'm going to do is just at this rear end, I'm just going to go back to the olive green that I had rather than the bright Caddis green. And I'm just going to put a tiny little bit, and I'm just going to finish just at the rear end here. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Bulk it up a little bit. And then a little bit of Sally Hansen just on my thread. Not too much. You don't want it to bead down your thread. Take my tie-in, my whip finish tool. 1, 2, 3. And we're in. And we just use a little scalpel blade, just push it across, and that's finished at that point. And then what I like to do is just take my dubbing brush and just give it a little friendly brush just in the direction of the legs. Make it a lot buggier than it currently looks. It doesn't look so contrived. Get that bottom bit in, there we go. Then we just draw it all back. And there we go. So, Peeping Caddis. And it's one of those flies that, again, technique. It's all about technique. Okay. So yeah, I'm just having a look at the various comments that are coming up. Let's have a look. Yep, so it's fish slow on the bottom. Hi, Simon. So yeah, so James, yes, Neil's mentioned it. The purpose of the bead here, I do a lot of river fishing these days, and the fish sit at the bottom quite regularly, and I want it to get down very quickly to them. So this is a 3mm bead. You can oversize it and put a bigger bead on it. This hook in itself is a size 16, so it's not a big hook, but it takes a phenomenal number of fish. The grayling particularly love it. Just seeing what else I've missed. Don't worry, Luke. It'll all be up. So it's partridge for the legs, Luke. No, Dan, don't, because I do actually prefer my lolly stick with some Velcro, but I can't find it. I put it down somewhere, so my last resort is the Stomfo brush. I do like it, but it's not as good as my homemade one. I just really like how it just pulls it all through. So don't rush out and buy anything completely different. Okay, now tied in lots of different sizes. It's great. Rainbows in particular on still waters, they really like it if you stick some, like what am I talking about here? This hen spectra dubbing. They really like it if you use combinations of this as well, and they'll come and hit it, which is quite cool. You can swap out the tungsten and just put in a brass bead. You could put in a glass bead in there as well to have it really light. Could miss it out altogether and just tie it on a normal straight hook with a lead underbody. It doesn't matter at all. Okay. Anybody got any questions about that? I think that's my quickest tie so far. Just looking at Neil's comment there about size 16. Where do you fish then, Neil? Because we're fishing when I'm fishing on the Itchin and the Meon, if we go above sort of size 14, they're snooty, our trout down here. They just stick their noses up at it, and it's they're just really fussy. We find the go small, you can entice some really big fish. You mean this, Dave? So yeah, the Spectra in the multi. Do you know what? I think I bought it many years ago from Cliff Harvey Angling when it was still up and running. They were based in South Wales. Great little shop that was. I actually went up there one day, but they went under and they sold off loads of their stuff. But I picked these up, I think, about 5 or 6 years ago, to be perfectly honest. You can see that they last forever, absolutely last forever. Okay, so Neil, yeah, the River D, what a fantastic river, Neil, loving that. Malcolm, have you ever used crushed eggshell? Really is good. I've heard that it can be Malcolm, and I will. What I'm going to have to do is we're going to have to do a tie-in, and you're going to have to show me how you use it. I have thought about messing around with sand and things like that, and sort of getting the really realistic look, but I tend to want to tie these up pretty quickly, so because I go through them like at a rate of knots. Most of them end up in trees and in snags anyway. Let's have a look. So Rod, would you do on a size 20? I have tied. I do take them down to an 18. Okay, so black nickel, fully mill 18. And in fact, I do have some hooks somewhere around here that go down to a 20. But we find that particularly if we're hunting little brook trout, little brookies, they like the really small ones. Okay. Apply the resin and drop on the carpet. Not quite sure what Mrs. Roberts would say about that. Okay, so in terms of sort of that sort of peeping caddis, that's, you know, that is ultimately, if I could, I think Dave, you put up a post earlier on, didn't you, about the top flies throughout the season. I thought every month I was just going to put peeping caddis because it's every month it catches fish. Okay, it's nice. I find it relatively quick to tie. It's all about practice, as they all are. It's all about technique, and it's a rather gorgeous, fly. Yeah, Kieran, I think I've got some Fasner jig hooks here, but I don't know where they are. They're around somewhere, sort of in a bit of a mess. Okay. So yeah, lots of alternatives. Yeah, James, top of a pheasant tail makes a great case. Yeah, absolutely. All sorts of things that go in there. I think as well that Sprite, although they weren't, I think that they are now starting to do jig hooks. So I might look at getting some in for the shop and see what we can see what we've got, because I'm tying more and more on a jigged hook. Particularly for the river, as Kieran said, that they very fundamentally flip upside down, so that they become less entangled in the weed as such. Okay. Right then, folks. So I did say that I was going to do some variants of the Peeping Caddis, but they're very much exactly the same, just with slight tweaks to it. So it really is about what you like and what you can and what you prefer to do, and it's just play with them ultimately. See what happens. I just found my size 14 jigs that I couldn't find. What I thought I'd do now is show you guys a nice straightforward sort of bloodworm pattern. It's a lightweight bloodworm that you can tie up. Okay, so we got a question from Neil. How do you stop the bead moving backwards? I tend to use lead wraps covered in tie and silk and varnish. I've never really had too many issues. I just build up a little thread dam just behind it, and I find that the materials, because I was putting in those underlayers and I was going back and then forward and back and then forward, it builds up enough material to keep the bead where I want it. I do occasionally, if I find that it isn't doing what I want it to do, I will come in and I will put a little dab of UV resin just in and just zap it, and that'll just hold it in place. Okay, right, so second fly tonight. Said I want to maximize the number of flies. I'm gonna tie a sort of a bloodworm pattern that is quite successful for me, and I'm using here a size 14 scud hook Sprite, barbless. Okay, and I'm going to use I think it's a Vivus red thread for this, in terms of a bloodworm. So I'm going to start up at the eye, and I'm going to bring my thread down the shank of the hook, around the bend, and I'm going to take it quite far round. Okay, so you can see round to about there, so that, yeah, so that's about as far as I want to go. Could go a little bit further, but don't really want to. Just going to take that off, And then I'm just going to take it all the way back up to the eye, and then I'm going to whip finish. Now I'd like to say that's it, but it's not. Okay, but you could go anywhere with that at this point. So I've got to that point. What I've done is I've formed an underbody of red. Okay, because what I'm now going to use is I'm going to use these Matsuno size 11 seed beads that you can pick up in haberdashers and craft shops. These are silver lined ruby red, so they've got a silver sheen to them on the inside. And you can pick up a little vial of them for a couple of quid, and this will last you for the rest of your life, unless of course you're into sequins and all those sorts of things. But what I'm going to do is just going to take a few of them, and I'm just going to take the hook out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to thread a number of them onto my hook and over the underbody. He says, oh, I picked up the wrong hook. Yep, I picked up the wrong hook. Okay, we'll start that one again. Robert, you idiot. Right, so best laid plans. Here's all my hooks. They're hiding around here somewhere. Ah, there it is. That's the one I want. Actually, I want the buzzer hook rather than the scud hook. It's not as thick. That's why I had a bit of a problem there. I want it slightly finer wire for this. That's right. So we'll just start that one again. So I'm going to put that back in. There we go. And we'll just start that bit again. So we get down. Back down to our 3/4 of the way around the bend. I'm going to take my thread all the way back up again. Get rid of that. Little whip finish. Or a half hitch, whatever it takes your fancy. Trim off. And then I can start threading them on, and they'll actually fit this time. You can get slightly wider beads as well to fit on larger hooks. But I quite like these smaller beads with the silver lining. So you just give that a little bit of sparkle. Now there's no weight to this. So it's very much a still water pattern, or very slow flowing water, where it's going to find the bottom eventually. I'm in no rush to retrieve it, particularly when the fish are feeding deep, and you can see that they're sort of hitting the bottom, sending up clouds of mud, and quite often they're grubbing around for these bloodworms. So at this point, I just put, there we go. So at this point, I've just put a whole load of these beads onto the hook, like so. And they sit there, and they look pretty. Okay. And now the next stage is for some UV resin. Now, my torch is on charge, so bear with me. So back again. Yeah, Dave, this is a good pattern for mullet in slightly larger sizes. It's very, very good. So literally all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some golf thin man resin, and I'm just going to put in, let me get some coming out. There we go. I'm just going to put a little dot just in there, and then just move the beads up so they sit and butt up next to each other. There we go. There we go. And there we go. So they're going to sit next to each other. And then give them a blast. And that should hold them all in place. Then we come back in with the red tying thread. And I'm just going to reposition my hook slightly. Like so. And I'm just going to reposition my tying thread here. And bring it back up. And I'm going to come in with my scalpel blade, push it across, and move it from there. Okay, so my next stage, well, is good old marabou, scarlet marabou, for the tail end to give it a bit of wispiness. And I'm just going to take some of this nice fluff. I'm going to take about 1/2 centimetre, 3/4 centimetre. Like so. Looks quite a lot, but believe you me, it gets snapped off and bitten off really, really quickly. And I'm looking at it. I'm going to place it in at the end over here. I want it reasonably long because I want it in the water to do that sort of movement in the water as it gets pulled up or as I lift it. So if it's too short, you don't get any movement at all. And that's about right. And then I'm just going to pinch wrap it behind the furthest most bead. There we go. Second wrap in. I'm going to put a third in. I'm just going to check it. Check about where it is. That's perfect. And then I'm going to come in and I'm just going to trim those waste ends away. And then I'm going to build up a tapered end at the back end here, so it all sort of sits, hopefully, fairly seamlessly. And then when you think you've done that, at that point, come in. 1, 2, 3 on the whip finish. Push it back in. And I'm just going to trim that off. You could just leave it like that. But what I do like to do is I just like to take my resin again, and the thread wraps at the end here. This is where the thin man resin is really good because it's not all gloopy and it just fits in the gap. So I'm just going to bring it up over the back of the fly. I'm going to cover the whole thing, and if needs be, I'm going to come in with a needle and just spread it out evenly, like so. Take my torch, I'm going to give it a blast. like so. And just because it's force of habit, I always tend to come in with a little bit of Sally Hansen, just to harden off across the top, and just one layer over, and that's it. Nothing more. You don't want too much. What you then have is a nice little bloodworm imitation. That when fished slowly on the drift, on the drop, the intermediate line, will pick up fish that are feeding very, very, very low. And as Dave said, it can be a deadly mullet pattern as well. And Colin MacLeod refers to very similar things in his book. If you haven't read it, it's a great, great piece of writing. Okay. So Neil, let's have a look. Do you use Sally Hansen instead of varnish? I use Sally Hansen because it's very, very, very strong, but I'll often use Celia varnish because it soaks into the thread, whereas Sally Hansen tends to just sit on the top, because let's face it, it's an overcoat for nails. It's not easily absorbed, whereas the formulation of Celia makes it absorbed into the thread, and therefore it forms a deeper layer of varnish, so that it's less likely to slip. Okay. Rod says he uses them on small rivers. Yeah. The bloodworm ultimately is an early larval stage of the chironomid, so there are significant numbers in most slower flowing rivers, and the fish do chow down on them. Can the fish see the hook? Do you know what? I think that's been debated over and over again, Jack. If they can see the hook, they're not very good at it, at telling what it is, because we tend to catch a lot of them. I find though that I'm fishing more and more with black nickel hooks than I am with other colours, just in case. But then, about 2 seasons ago, I tied up about 100 buzzers for a competition for the entrants to use, and I used a silver buzzer hook, and people were telling me that actually that increased their catch rate. So it's these fish ultimately, particularly rainbows, they're predatorial. So often they'll hit something because they think it's not supposed to be there, but also if it's going to possibly be food, they're going to increase that energy intake. Okay. So Rod, in terms of hook sizes, 20s, 22s, 24s, I can get some. I haven't got any at the moment, but I can possibly get some. They are exceptionally hard to get hold of in very small hook sizes, as you probably noticed. If you look at the fulling mill hooks, they tend to stop at anything below an 18. Sometimes it's even a 16 is the lowest that they'll go. I find TMCO do a large range of particularly small hooks, but the smaller the hook, the finer the wire most of the time. So therefore, if you hook into a slightly larger fish, you might end up with a bent out hook. Okay, just looking at what people are saying here. Okay, so we've got about 20-25 minutes. I think that's the quickest I've tied 2 flies with you guys so far, which is fantastic. We're maximising it out. I'm just wondering, I'm throwing it out there, and you're probably going to do me one here. Is there anything you would like me to have a go at tying, as long as I've got the stuff? The first person that says a blob gets ejected. A cat's whisker. A cat's whisker. An egg. A royal wolf. Oh man. Or a royal wilf. A snake. I think we'll save the wolf for another session day, because that takes a little bit of prep to make sure I've got the right stuff out in front of me, if that's okay. But I promise you, I will tie up some wolves. I have no idea what an incredible cat is there at all. I suppose it's some sort of cat's whisker. A butcher, that's a Diawl Bach. Diawl Bach. Yeah, from my hometown. Rod, I'll have a look. I'll see what I can get hold of. Okay. We got Chris wants a shipman's buzzer. Elker Caddis. Oh, we did Elker Caddis last time, David. It is up on there. Got Prince Nymph. Anything a brown trout will take in still water. Oh man. Okay. So you got lots of things there. Wrote myself right open to this. Oh god. Let's go back. Let's have a look at, let's go for Malcolm's Diawl Bach, because it's an absolute deadly pattern in its day. And it is fairly straightforward to tie as well. Depending on, it's I like to think of it as very much a sort of like a stripping buzzer sort of pattern. So I suppose it would come under the sort of the buzzery chironomid type. Jack says a blue flash damsel. You have to refer him back to episode 1, Dave, I do believe, or episode 2. Okay, black gnats. I'm going to come on to Darren. I'm going to come on and do dries later on in the season, if that's okay. But tell you what, we'll have a look at that Diawl Bachs first of all. So first of all, I've got a Sprite size 14 wet. It's fairly short shanked but strong wire, because often you're pulling a Diawl Bach, just little pulls, and they latch onto it, and you want something quite strong, so it's going to take that pull. I'm going to use, what have I got here? UTC. Okay, just because it's the only black thread I've got set up. So I'm just going to put on, I'm going to start off a couple of mil away from the eye, because I need to leave room for a head. And I'm just going to bring my tie-in thread down, so it's in line with the barb of the hook. Take it a couple of turns further back up, and then I can just remove that. And I've got my base layer on. Okay. Next we need a tail, so let me just go grab a couple of things. What have I got available to me that's hiding here? Okay, I've got a bit of I've got an Indian hen cape here. Let's grab some stuff for the tail. See if this is any good. Just gonna grab a feather at the top end of this, and Yeah, that should do. I'm just going to pull out some fibres to 90 degrees to the stem of the feather. Just remove those. There you go. A little bit too many there. Just want this as a nice slim little devil, which is what Diawl Bach means. I'm just going to pinch those out. Just going to nip off the curly bits at the end. And I'm just going to place it in. And I'm going to pinch wrap. Don't underestimate the pinch wrap. Really important wrap for your flies. And I'm just going to build that up. Take that back in like so. There we go. Okay, so we got the tail in. Okay, now we need something for the rib. Let me just have a look and see what I've got hiding over here in my too thick. I want some really fine, well, that'll do. Got some really fine blue hollow tinsel here. Tend to buy my hollow tinsel in multiple spools if I can. I don't like running out of it. I use so much of it for lots of different things. But I'm going to use this as a rib. I'm going to tie this in. So I'm just going to bring it in, tie it down. Notice I'm going down and then back up. You don't get any unsightly steps in your underbody then. So remember that the whole point of this particular fly is that it's sleek and slim. And now I'm just going to jump in again. I'm going to grab some peacock. I think I told you once before, this is when I wrestled off a peacock at Paynton Zoo that was trying to steal my lunch. Thought I'd have a couple of his feathers if he was going to have my sandwich. And I don't want too many pieces. I just want two. Just going to take off two. And I've got the ends almost together. And because those ends of the peacock are a bit too fine, I'm just going to nip those off. And I'm literally going to bring those in, pull down, and tie those in. I'm going to take myself all the way back up to the end, and then I've got my peacock. I'm going to wrap it, touching turns, down my body, taking my time, not twisting it, not turning it. I want to get that bottle brush sort of effect as I'm going down. Nothing wrong with just sticking your finger on the top, just pushing under. You could attach it in hackle pliers. I quite like the feel of it in my hands so that I know what's happening. When we get to the end, just going to tie that down. And then I'm going to come in, nip that off. So you can see we've got the body of the Diawl Bach already in play. And then I'm going to take my blue hollow rib and in equal turns, I'm just going to trap down the herl. So I'm going to try and get 4 to 5 turns at the body on a size 14. To get to the top, I'm just going to put a couple of locking turns in place. There we go. A couple of locking turns in place. I'm just going to stroke those back just for the moment. And I'm going to put 1, 2 more locking turns in. Now, next what we need to think about is a throat hackle. You can put on a full hackle if you like, and just bring it down. I tend to like to just take some material and just place it there. So I'm just going to quickly grab my little pack of blue jay wings, and I'm going to take out my jay wing. There we go, and you've got these jay blues here, and they're absolutely beautiful. And I'm going to take one of these. You get a couple of flies out of this, so don't discard it. I'm just going to pull it out, and there it goes, and I've got it there. What I want to do is I'm going to put a blue jay throat hackle in. So I'm just going to pull it out 90 degrees again. Okay, so we can see we got it there. And I'm just going to tease it away from the stem, like so. And then very gently, I'm going to try and fold it back on itself so that the outside is on both sides. And if you find that you haven't done enough, just redo it. Now what you can do here is you can turn it upside down. And placing in your throat hackle, well, you can't see that from there, I'll just move the camera down. Placing in your throat hackle, let me just focus here. Doesn't seem to want to focus because my logo's in the way. Oop, didn't want to do that. That's better. There we go. Right, so a bit of jiggery pokery. I'm going to put my throat hackle in, and I want my throat hackle to be just further than the hook point, so about there. And I'm just going to pinch wrap again, one, like that, just underneath, two, and it just fits there, just underneath. And it's sitting there quite nicely. And then I'll return it back up. Just return the camera so you can see it. There we go. Return it back up. You can see that we've got that in place. And then I'm just going to come in and very gently just trim off as close as I can the waist sections. There we go. Without losing any of my throat hackle. And then I'm just going to build up a head. And I like the UTC thread for this because I can get it to lie flat. I'm just going to build up a very, very, very simple head. There we go. And we're done. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. In, tighten that off, and there we go. We've got a nice little Diawl Bach. Just such a simple fly in every sense of it, and this is where is it? Yep, there we go. So the varnish, remember what I said earlier? It soaks really nicely into the thread, whereas Sally Hansen just sits on it. And what I'd like to do is I like to take a needle and I just dip the needle in till I get a little bead of varnish, and then I will literally just slide it along the head, turn it, slide it along the head. And what this does as well is it allows and soaks in and holds the throat hackle in place. There we go. And then, as always, just looking to see what I've got here to do it. I haven't got a lot. I'm going to use this piece of peacock. As always, try and clear out the eye, just in case. I'm just going to push a piece of peacock in. back and forth. There we go. Nice simple dial Bach. I think it's let's have a look. So Dan's put it on. You could put on some cheeks on it, some jungle cock. You could put in some goose biots, anything. To be honest, just give it that little bit of colour. I'm gonna have a look at that June bug. Thanks, Luke. Yeah, Gareth. So the sprite hooks. So yeah, you can. I've got a good selection on the website on there as well. And if you need anything specific, you just let me know. I can try and get things in. Nick in the peacock. It just does my head in. When you break, you have to go all the way back again. And in terms of whip finishes, it's down to you, Kieran. Two whip finishing and then whip finishing again, perfectly acceptable. Okay, let's go with what you feel comfortable with when you're tying. Ultimately, that's what I always say. Have I used striped ostrich feathers before? I do use a lot of ostrich. Not striped ostrich, but I do use a lot of ostrich. I've got lots of different colours. Yeah, commercially tied flies. Yeah, they don't remove the varnish. One thing I do sell commercially tied flies on the website, and the one thing that I did when I was looking for a supplier is I got samples in, and I made sure that that they were tying them with good practice as well. And the guys and the ladies that are tying them are very receptive to feedback. So they've gone back and they've changed things for me as I've been talking to them. Lovely patterns. Yeah, have a go at any of them, Jack. All right, make sure you can tie them better than Dave. The K-pop dubbing, I'm still waiting for it to arrive. It's a very, very, very in demand material at the moment. So I'm probably on a pecking list of suppliers. So it will arrive, and when it does, I shall definitely be using it because I'm quite excited to have a look at it. Kapok is a natural dubbing material from a plant, and it seems to be all the rage. It's got great floatant capabilities, allegedly. Be interesting to see. So there we go. It's got to be a first for us, I think. 3 flies in a night. So we've got the first fly, which was our Peeping Caddis. If you were to ask me if I could have a box full of flies to catch trout, what would it be? I'd have this. In all of its variations, I just have Peeping Caddis, and I'd quite happily just nymph for fish all the time, much to the disgust of Kieran when I'm fishing with him. No, only joking, Kieran. I do like a dry fly, but I do like fishing a nymph. We've also had this rather sexy bloodworm, which didn't take much, just a couple of materials. Seed beads can be picked up from hobbycraft places like that. And then finally, courtesy and for Malcolm, the Diawl Bach, the little devil, in one of its many forms for you tonight. Okay, so let's have a... Yeah, it is the fashionable dubbing choice at the moment. K-pop, Luke. I think Semperfly have done a really good job on marketing it, but also because it's plant based, it's not synthetic, which is great. B, it's not an animal product, and therefore it's from the husk of a plant, For the life of me, off the top of my head, couldn't tell you which one, but I will at some point. So ultimately, it ticks all the boxes for lots and lots of people. And I think the one thing I'm interested in finding out is what is it like to dub? What's its holding capacity? How big are the fibers? How does it fit if I then mix it with other things? And ultimately, what does it look like on the fly? So I bought in. I have ordered in lots of really quite cool colours. So what was that next question? Let's have a look. When do you use wax cotton and when not? Well, David, a large proportion of the cottons tend to come pre-waxed anyway. I have mentioned it in some of my other sessions that I've done. I do wax my thread occasionally. It doesn't make too much difference to me personally if I wax it or not. If I want it to, I will double wax, so add wax to it if I want it to hold and I want it to really bed in. And also if I'm using particularly seal's fur dubbing. But most of the threads are pre-waxed, so they've already got enough wax on them to be perfectly fair. But it's nothing wrong with adding a little bit of wax. In fact, like in previous sessions, I got little bottle of wax discs. So this is from one of those big round wax discs that you can buy from vineyards and things, and I just warm it up in hot water till it goes soft, and then pinch off little penny-sized pieces, form them into discs, and sort of store them in a bottle, so that I end up with quite a few. So then I just pick them out when I need them and use those, and I just like David McPhail does. And this was what I took from David McPhail many years ago, is I just attach it to my finger, and my body heat melts the wax a bit, and it sticks and molds, because the melting point of the wax that we're using is quite low. Okay, let's see what else we've got. Never seen it tied with a peacock gill. Well, I'm glad that I've shown you something today, Malcolm. I do like it with peacock. It just does something for me. Okay, right. So that's almost done for the evening. Thank you for putting up with me again. It's been a pleasure as always. I do enjoy doing these. They're always nerve-wracking to begin with, but I get into the swing of things. I will be catching up with my step-by-steps and with the individual tying videos for individual patterns. I am conscious that I am very, very behind, but real life takes over, I'm afraid. But stay safe. Get some tying in. Contact me if you need anything, if you've got any questions, and ultimately, enjoy this time where we can't necessarily go fishing as much to refill those boxes, because sooner or later we're going to be back out there properly. Okay, so there we go, guys. Enjoy, have fun, take care, see you again.